The day I was discharged from the hospital, my twin sister committed suicide. In her phone, only one final message remained. Save me. She was isolated at school, forced by classmates to drink toilet water, had staples pressed into her fingers, her body covered with wounds from being bullied and tortured. 1 month later, I stepped into that school, bearing a face identical to my sister's, like 2 drops of water. The bullies were very excited, but I was even more thrilled because I was born with an antisocial personality. The only connection I had to humanity was this little sister. The day I left the hospital, the sky was still overcast. I carried my luggage back home, but inside, that house was no different from a cold tomb. My little sister was lying in the hospital, on a bed, her body full of tubes, like a frail lotus stem that could easily break. A week earlier, she had jumped from the highest floor of the school. If a bike shed below hadn't accidentally caught her, what would have greeted me now would only be a cold corpse. The school remained silent, only vaguely implying that my sister had complicated relationships with boys and a bad reputation. Our foster parents accepted $100,000 in hush money and signed the withdrawal form. They didn't welcome my return at all. Over the years, I had mostly been in the hospital, with no affection for them, but they didn't dare say anything, even showing a somewhat cautious, flattering attitude. I knew they feared me. They had taken the house of my biological parents, abused my little sister, but were wary of me, a patient who spent years in the hospital. The next time I was allowed to visit, my sister had been moved to a regular ward. The 3-person room was noisy and lively, but my sister lay alone by the window. She was pitifully thin, her face almost devoid of color. I placed a fruit basket by her bed, like other patients' families. I knew she couldn't eat, nor did I understand why people did this. I was just imitating, trying to make it seem like she still had a normal family member. When the nurse came to clean her body, I didn't leave. The woman with rough limbs carelessly turned my sister's frail body, like playing with a broken wind-up doll. She pulled open my sister's loose hospital gown. Beneath the striped fabric were overlapping scars, white and terrifying. I pushed her aside, using my fingers to gently touch each burn, stab, cut, and slash. These wounds had accumulated over years. I was very familiar with them, but they should only have existed on my body. I needed pain to suppress the impulses in my heart. But my sister was different from me. She was a gentle, shy girl, like a small animal. She was very afraid of pain. Even when I had new wounds, she would shed tears of pity for me. So where did these scars come from? The nurse sighed. What a sin. Such a pretty girl tortured to this extent. I turned to look at her. Could it be that she did it herself? The nurse widened her eyes. Little girl, could you hurt yourself so cruelly? I could, but I didn't answer. She curled her lips and muttered, You're her sister, right? These wounds are obviously abnormal. Look at these fingers. The calluses are all old scars, and the long scar on her thigh is clearly from a knife. I held my sister's hand. Her once slender fingers were now completely deformed. I lifted the blanket, directly pulling down her hospital pants. Hey, what are you doing? The nurse hurriedly stepped forward to stop me, but I quickly grabbed her wrist. Besides the burns, my sister's legs clearly bore words crudely carved with a knife. Toilet dog. Back home, my foster parents had prepared dinner. They specially reserved a seat for me at the east side, with neatly arranged bowls and chopsticks. Taylor, today your mother made your favorite plum-glazed ribs, my foster father said, forcing a nervous smile. I glanced at the 2 anxious people in front of me, calmly setting down my bag, and said, I don't like it. I repeated again, my tone extremely cold. I don't like plum-glazed ribs. The woman immediately stood up, her voice trembling. I'll make something else for you. I tilted my head slightly, observing the old couple clutching their clothes, and calmly took a step forward. Are you too afraid of me? I looked straight at my foster father. Why? What's different between me and my sister? He also hurriedly stood up, his hands gripping the trembling chopsticks tightly, but unable to say a word. My sister's room still had award certificates from elementary school plastered on the walls. Her desk was very tidy, with only a notebook and a few pens in the drawer. I opened the notebook. It had been hollowed out, hiding an old, outdated phone, still with a numeric keypad. I entered the password, and the first thing I saw was the last message my sister sent before jumping. Sis, save me. The recipient was clearly noted. My dearest sister. I clutched my face, letting out a silent laugh. My sister was at her wit's end, so desperate that in her final moment of giving up on life, she chose to send a plea for help to someone she knew clearly couldn't come to save her. Besides the message, the phone also stored a recording. Mixed with my sister's pained cries and desperate pleas were the mocking laughter and vicious curses of the people tormenting her. I listened to that recording over and over until the phone's battery died. Then I stretched, slowly walked to the living room, and said to my foster father sitting there, "Help me enroll in school." He looked at me in shock. "As soon as possible," I said coldly. Half a month later, I officially entered the school I'd been away from for years, completing all procedures. The homeroom teacher led me into the classroom, pointing me to the only empty seat in the middle. I walked through the rows of desks, the whispers growing louder, until a provocative whistle rang out from the back of the class. A male student with slightly narrowed eyes, his gaze like a reptile crawling over my body, said in an ambiguous tone, "Welcome, new kid." I walked past my seat, straight to him, my heart reciting the name on his textbook, Patrick Quinn. I looked at him and said softly, "I remember you." The boy immediately gave a lewd smile, responding to me in a teasing tone. "I remember you too. Let's hang out after school." The room erupted in mocking laughter and malicious whispers. I returned to my seat, looking down at the wooden desk, still clearly etched with stupid, childish words carved long ago. As soon as I set my bag in the desk, I felt someone lightly tap my shoulder. A girl stood beside me, with a very beautiful face, softly striking up a conversation. "You look a lot like an old classmate of ours. Do you know Tyler Johnson?" I listened to her voice, suddenly asking, "What's your name?" The girl's expression faltered slightly, but still maintained a smile as she answered me. "I'm Sophia Lynn." Patrick Quinn. Sophia Lynn. I got the answers I wanted. I curled my lips, calmly saying, "Nice to meet you, classmate Sophia. You're really beautiful." She pretended to be shy, tilting her head to avoid it. "Thank you, new kid." My smile deepened. A face this beautiful should only be placed in a glass case for people to admire. When school ended, Patrick Quinn actively invited me to go home with him, and I didn't refuse. His family was all abroad. He always had a private driver pick him up. The boy deliberately reserved the back seat for me, but I stood outside, emphasizing that I wasn't used to riding in cars. Patrick Quinn leaned against the car door, his eyes looking at me with mockery and provocation. "Taylor Johnson, this might be your last chance." I coldly replied, "You can get out of the car." "Who do you think you are? Aren't you the same kind of person?" he sneered, slamming the car door and leaving. The next day, rumors spread everywhere that I went home with Patrick Quinn. I opened my desk drawer, and inside was the carcass of a rotting sparrow. A voice behind me, both disgusted and excited, rang out. "Who would put a dead bird in classmate Taylor's desk?" The speaker was a lackey of Sophia Lynn. She covered her mouth, glancing at her friends around her, saying with feigned sympathy, "So gross, right, Taylor Johnson?" But the corners of her mouth couldn't hide her smugness. That day after school, I followed her into a small alley, stuffed the sparrow carcass into her mouth, and softly asked, "How's the taste? Even more disgusting, right?" The girl's piercing scream was choked by the bird carcass in her throat. I looked at the horror in her eyes, giving a very sincere smile. What you eat tomorrow depends on you. After that, the little lackey stopped coming to school, and no more strange things appeared in my desk. Sophia Lynn started actively approaching me to chat, indirectly probing about my family background. Poor health, dead parents, no friends. I deliberately wove the information she wanted to hear into our conversations. As expected, her eyes became contemptuous, but she still maintained her gentle, kind facade, suggesting we become friends. I smiled and agreed. Great. I love making friends the most. After school, Sophia Lynn led me to a place she called a secret base, which was actually just an abandoned warehouse near the school, filled with old wooden crates and a pile of faded blankets. As soon as I stepped inside, I was restrained by a male student from behind. Sophia Lynn stood with her arms crossed, not saying a word, and slapped me hard across the face. The inside of my cheek was cut by my teeth, bleeding fresh blood. I swallowed the sweet metallic liquid and raised my head to look at her. "Aren't we good friends?" The girl burst out laughing, as if she'd heard the most ridiculous joke in the world. "Why are you so naive?" She tightly gripped my chin, her eyes full of hatred. "You think you're something? No different from your sister, using that face to seduce others. Trash like you is only fit to be a whore." I pretended to be surprised. "So you're angry because you didn't get to be one? What did you say?" She immediately raised her voice, furious. I calmly uttered a name, Patrick Quinn. "You?" She instantly became enraged, kicking me hard in the stomach. The sudden, sharp pain made my temples bead with cold sweat. But the blood flowing in my body began to boil more than ever. At this moment, another unfamiliar girl stepped forward, neatly dressed, her face cold and arrogant, glancing at me. "My favorite dog died, so you'll replace it." As I was pressed hard to the ground, forced to bark like a dog, I calmly asked, "Doing this doesn't count as breaking the rules." "Does it?" Sophia Lynn laughed hysterically, bending down to grab my bangs. "Then go tattle to the teachers, see if they care." I looked up at them, whispering to myself, "So it's not breaking the rules? No punishment." The strange girl gave a slight smile. "If you're sensible, be an obedient dog and stop overthinking." She bent down, lightly patting my face. "Come on, bark for your master." I ignored her words, continuing to ask, "Did you treat my sister like this too?" The girl sneered cruelly. "Training a good dog isn't easy like that. Looks like you want to try it too." She stood up straight, her voice turning cold. "Disobedient dogs must be punished." The male student pressed hard on my back, while Sophia Lynn stepped forward to tape my mouth and nose shut with duct tape. "She's not resisting. What if something happens?" The boy restraining me started to worry. Sophia Lynn hesitated slightly, but the other girl was much calmer. "What's there to fear? Even if she really dies here, we won't go to jail." Sophia Lynn immediately chimed in. "That's right. We're only 15. We don't have to take responsibility for anything." The suffocation grew clearer. My blood seemed to ignite with waves of fury, my fingertips gradually going numb. So even this isn't punished. That day, I returned home very late. My foster parents were still out gambling. I took a rusty key from my suitcase, hesitated for a moment, then stepped out the door. The next day, I went to school late. The homeroom teacher called me out to talk, saying that my admission here was already an exception, demanding I not continue seeking special treatment. I didn't say anything, only pulled down my collar to reveal a clear cigarette burn on my collarbone. So, does this count as special? He had called me out to the hallway to humiliate me in front of others, but he didn't expect me to counter like this. He was clearly flustered, hurriedly pulling my shirt back up, saying the school would definitely handle it. The result of that handling was just another vague announcement banning smoking in school. Because of my report, that girl appeared before me again. Chloe Reed, a student in my grade, both wealthy and talented, excelling in all subjects. In the eyes of teachers, she was a perfect all-around student, but she was the one who pressed that burning cigarette onto my neck. I was locked inside a bathroom stall. The last class before the break was still gym, and it was a long time until dismissal. The cramped, confined space continuously stimulated every nerve in me. Not yet. I had to endure a bit longer. I gasped for breath, trying to bite my lip hard to suppress the frenzied excitement rising within me. To alleviate that feeling, I started pounding the door frantically. The laughter from outside proved someone was enjoying their handiwork. My panicked, fearful actions clearly made them very satisfied. My throat tightened, sweat dripped into my eyes, my entire body trembled uncontrollably. I don't know how much time passed before the door suddenly opened. A strange male student stood at the doorframe, looking down at me. "Don't be afraid," he pulled my arm, helping me stand. I was passing by and heard the noise. "Why were you locked in here?" His voice was gentle, his skin fair, his eyes very beautiful and clear. Seeing I didn't answer, he didn't ask further. I followed him out, looking down at the empty bathroom floor where a mop lay horizontally. It was probably what they used to block the door to lock me in. After leaving, I returned to class and sat down. The desks and chairs around me were empty. Only mine was still filled with miscellaneous items. The old carvings on the desk hadn't faded, and new ones had already appeared. I traced those carvings with my fingers, my trembling fingertips cut by the rough wood, drawing blood. The sharp pain surged in waves of dull aches, stimulating my nerves, making me even more excited. It was almost time, very soon. I took a deep breath, licking the fresh blood from my fingertip. At that moment, the boy returned to the classroom, holding a warm drink and placing it on my desk. "Your hand keeps shaking. Do you need to go to the infirmary?" I raised my head, narrowing my eyes to look at his handsome, gentle face. "You're not from this class?" He smiled slightly. "I'm Connor Peacock, from the next class." I propped my chin, looking at him. "I really like listening to your voice. Can you talk to me for a bit?" He thought for a moment, then smiled and agreed. "Sure." When the bell signaling the end of class rang, classmates flooded back into the classroom from the gym field. Everyone who saw Connor Peacock sitting next to me was surprised, especially Sophia Lynn, the mastermind behind locking me in the bathroom. She probably didn't expect the person who saved me to be Connor Peacock from the next class. But she didn't dare do anything too outrageous in front of everyone, only pretending to be friendly and pressing my shoulder hard. So lucky, huh, Taylor? From then on, Connor Peacock and I interacted more. He proactively helped me review lessons, and I shared a glass of fruit juice with him every day. However, the bullying from Chloe Reed and her group didn't lessen at all. Every time they tormented me, I would ask a question. "Doing these things won't get you punished, right?" And every time, they used their actions to prove to me that the bullied would never see the light of day, while the abusers would always remain carefree and at ease. Until one day, a huge rain poured down, the torrential rain blurring visibility, washing the ground clean. I was soaked all night, and the next day at school, I had a slight fever. The class was also missing a few people, including Patrick Quinn. The second day, the third day, until Patrick Quinn's family reported him missing to the police. The whole class learned he wasn't sick, but had disappeared. Missing along with him was Chloe Reed from the next class. The class began spreading all sorts of rumors. Some said they were in love. Others said Chloe Reed liked Connor Peacock, and Connor Peacock was close to me. If a life of being bullied was a dark hell with no way out, then Connor Peacock was the ray of light piercing through the darkness. The class was in chaos over Patrick Quinn's matter, and Connor Peacock, worried I'd be anxious, proactively offered to walk me home. I refused, because my home wasn't a safe place either. My foster parents were deep in gambling debt, and the house walls were splattered with red paint. I returned home and found a hair tie with a small bell lying in a dusty corner. The next day, the police came to the school to question me. The officer in charge was a serious, middle-aged policeman. I sat in a small meeting room stammering, while his eyes looked at me with scrutiny. "Don't scare the kid," someone pulled him aside. "Both her biological parents are dead. Her sister is in the hospital, and she's being bullied by classmates. What more do you want her to say?" The man nodded to his colleague, but still stared at me intently. "I checked your records. You've always been hospitalized, never formally educated. The academic level of this school isn't suitable for you. Your sister attempted suicide here. You clearly know what kind of place this school is. So why did you still want to come?" I weakly raised my head. "But isn't this a school? A place to educate people, to help students grow? Shouldn't I come here?" I clenched my hands nervously, trying to ask the tall, imposing man in front of me. "So is this my fault?" The policeman left the meeting room, and the officer at the door slipped a bag of warm milk into my hand. "Don't be afraid, kid. The captain's just like that." He patted my head. "Cops are good people." The warm milk bag warmed my hands. I lowered my head, not responding. On the way back to class, I ran into Connor Peacock in the hallway. "In a few days, the class is organizing a hike. Want to come along?" I shook my head. "I'm weak. I can't hike far." Connor Peacock was silent for a moment, then suddenly smiled. "Then let them hike. We'll soak in the hot springs at the foot of the mountain." My face suddenly flushed. I fumbled looking at the milk bag in my hand, neither agreeing nor refusing. Connor Peacock also noticed. "This puffed-up bag is about to burst. If you're not drinking, give it to me." I snapped back, hurriedly running to the classroom to grab a bottle of juice for him. "Drink this. I made too much this morning." Connor Peacock laughed, took it, drank it all, and happily said, "Then it's settled. Next week I'll come pick you up." Before class, I hurriedly took out the hair tie I found at home and gave it to Connor Peacock. "I picked this up at home. Do you know it?" His expression changed instantly. "At your house?" I quietly explained. "My parents have been out for days. The house walls are covered in red paint. This thing appeared very strangely. I'm scared." When I got home after school, I saw the house door had been sealed with police tape. The police confirmed the hair tie I found was indeed Chloe Reed's, and they also found blood traces through a luminol reaction. My foster parents, missing for days, became the prime suspects, and I was taken back to the station. "What's your relationship with Chloe Reed?" "I don't know her." I shrank back in fear under the interrogation light. "We're not in the same class. I don't have any friends at all." When I left the police station, it was pitch dark. I didn't take a taxi, just quietly walked under the streetlights. Where were my foster parents now? Maybe they were fleeing with part of Chloe Reed's body. They were so high on drugs. When they sobered up, they realized there was a mutilated girl's body beside them. Two drug-addicted, disoriented people. Their stomachs hadn't even digested the human flesh and blood. Their teeth and lips still faintly carried the metallic smell of blood. How could they not be terrified? And where would they find the rationality to realize whether she was alive or dead when she appeared before them? My sister was still in a coma in the hospital. The doctor told me to prepare myself because she no longer had the will to survive. I didn't say anything, just shook the bell hair tie by her hand. Once, twice, 3 times. The crisp ringing echoed, and my sister's heart monitor began to respond. I leaned close to her ear. "That day, you were wearing this hair tie, weren't you? But from now on, she'll never have the chance to wear it again." The investigation into Chloe Reed's disappearance made progress, but there was no trace of Patrick Quinn. That day's rain was too heavy, washing away all evidence. Patrick Quinn seemed to have vanished completely from the world. But 2 days later, he suddenly appeared at his doorstep. The police came to question him, but he seemed panicked, his words incoherent, only revealing that on that rainy day, he was abducted onto a small truck, held for a few days, then released. Just a few short days were enough to completely break a middle school student. That evening, I stood in front of a private house, taking out the rusty key. The old lock was very hard to open. It took me a long time to push open the creaking door. The interior was very simple. I casually tossed my backpack onto the sofa, cooked a pack of instant noodles, ate slowly, then went down to the basement. Unlike the upper floor, the basement was meticulously arranged, even equipped with a separate sterilization system. A row of glass cabinets lined the wall. Inside were organs soaked in clear liquid, completely colorless, except for the glass jar at the far left, which held a fresh section of intestines. I placed the bell hair tie from my pocket in front of that glass jar, then turned to look at the male student, who had been silently kneeling in the corner. "How does it feel to be human again, classmate Patrick?" Patrick Quinn realized I had finally noticed him, hurriedly raising his head. Today the police asked me a lot, but I didn't say anything. His eyes lit up with intense excitement and longing. As I stepped closer, the anticipation in his eyes became unmistakable. He was hoping I'd praise him. I smiled, but immediately after, I slapped his face hard. This time, I didn't hold back. His face instantly reddened and swelled. I coldly repeated the question. "How does it feel to be human again?" Classmate Patrick Quinn immediately knelt upright, bowing his head low, saying, "I prefer being the master's dog." I tilted my head, admiring the boy who was once so arrogant, now humbly kneeling at my feet. Although I still held evidence of him losing control and killing Chloe Reed, compared to blatant threats, I was far more thrilled by destroying his personality. Like now, he would willingly return to the house my biological parents left behind, obediently submitting and following my orders unconditionally. Chloe Reed's body. I've helped you dispose of it, and the police have found someone else to take the blame. Now you're free, classmate Patrick. I lightly kicked his shoulder, but he trembled violently, frantically pressing his face to my shoe. "I don't need freedom. I am forever the master's dog." I laughed, using my finger to gently lift his chin. "Although you're not my most outstanding dog, you will definitely be the most obedient, right?" I returned without closing the window. This village was almost deserted. The old and young left behind had no value to fight over. Under the new demolition policy, the last group of uncompensated people had to accept being isolated behind the urban wall, becoming forgotten, hard to remove households, until someone posted on the school forum, turning an abandoned house in the village into a haunted house. Patrick Quinn also received this message. So on that rainy night, he used the excuse of exploring the haunted house to meet Chloe Reed, whom he had long secretly liked. They climbed in through an unlocked window. Everything went smoother than they imagined. Suddenly, a flash of lightning tore through the night. Thunder roared in their ears, and someone dropped the flashlight on the ground. At the end of that cold flashlight beam, a pair of unfamiliar feet suddenly appeared. The two terrified students didn't even have time to scream before it was all over. I locked them in the basement. Chloe Reed's extreme panic made me feel immensely satisfied. A girl who was always so proud and calm finally didn't hesitate to choose herself when faced with playing an innocent game where only one could live. They were tortured by darkness, hunger, and fear for a long time. When a weapon was placed in their hands, the first prey they thought of was the defenseless companion beside them. Now the tables had turned. They were no longer the arrogant bullies of the past. Patrick Quinn gave up resisting, trembling and drenched in sweat. I removed his blindfold, gently placing a sharp knife in his hand. Opposite was Chloe Reed, still hooded and struggling chaotically, her fear quickly turning into rage. I stepped back to enjoy this one-sided massacre. The girl's screams were muffled inside the black bag, the short blade repeatedly stabbing her body, but not fatally enough. She still writhed like a bug. I put away the camera, put on gloves, took the knife from the boy's hand, and precisely stabbed into Chloe Reed's spine. The girl convulsed violently, finally going still like a fish with its spinal nerve severed. Now she can't do anything to you anymore. I stood up, looking down at the boy at my feet. Patrick Quinn, trembling, crawled to hug my legs. Thank you. Thank you. The gratitude and submission born from fear and surviving death were the strongest chains. Patrick Quinn rested for 2 days and returned to school. He still sat in the back row, his gaze on me no longer hiding its fervor. Sophia Lynn continued to cause trouble for me. Without her helpers, she was much more alone, so she colluded with the homeroom teacher to falsely accuse me of stealing. Without any warning, he publicly criticized me in front of the class, allowing Sophia Lynn to rummage through my backpack and throw the dirty items they found in my face. Listening to the nearly 50-year-old man in front of me endlessly scold me as a thief, a parasite of society. I couldn't understand. Don't you need evidence to use such words to scold your student? The teacher angrily shouted. The witnesses and evidence are all here. What more proof do you want? That day, I was made to stand in punishment all afternoon, dragging my feet home late at night. Patrick Quinn had been waiting there long before. I'll help you teach them a lesson. He knelt at my feet, his hot breath full of excitement. I grabbed his chin, slowly lifting it. A good dog is only allowed to follow the master's orders. Understood? Before Friday afternoon dismissal, Connor Peacock and I finalized the time and place for the hike. That day, we set out very early. When we reached the middle of the mountain, as planned, he led me to a hot spring. The natural mineral water was thick with sulfur. I covered my face with a towel, listening to footsteps sometimes far, sometimes near, a hand gently placed on top of my head. Seeing I didn't object, that hand slowly moved down, brushing past my cheek, chin, neck. Before that hand went further, I quickly grabbed his wrist, pulled down the towel, and raised my head to look at the boy above. Connor Peacock lowered his eyes. If you don't want to, it's okay. His slightly sad tone made me feel guilty. I hurriedly explained. Of course I want to. It's just that I felt a bit. My face flushed, too embarrassed to continue, but Connor Peacock suddenly frowned. There's blood coming from your leg. I was startled, looked down, immediately bowed my head in shame, pushed him away, and ran back to the room. Connor Peacock didn't chase after me. Perhaps he lost interest and didn't want to comfort me at that moment. I stopped at a corner, bringing my freshly injured finger to my mouth. The wound that had just healed was deliberately bitten open by me, blood seeping out again. The warm, metallic taste of fresh blood slowly filled my mouth, making me tremble with excitement. The hot spring incident made Connor Peacock disappear for a few days, while my situation grew worse. Sophia Lynn had someone throw away my backpack, dumping all its contents onto my desk. Among the textbooks, a small square plastic item caught the class's attention. It was a condom, still in its shiny silver wrapper. The mocking and disgusted stares immediately pinned me to a pillar of shame. At that moment, any defense became meaningless. No one cared whether that thing was really mine. That small piece of plastic had turned from an ordinary item into a sharp blade in the hands of the wicked. They only needed someone to vent their anger on, not the truth. I was completely isolated. After school, I went to the trash to retrieve my backpack. Connor Peacock silently appeared beside me, helping me pick up my things, and also saw the item that shouldn't have been there. "Connor, I really didn't do anything. You have to believe me." My eyes welled up with tears, desperately pleading for the only salvation in front of me. "I really want to believe you." Connor Peacock's eyes were complex, hesitating to speak. "I can prove it," I insisted. Finally, he gave a gentle smile. "Don't be afraid. Leave everything to me." The next afternoon, Connor Peacock quietly handed me a hotel room key card. Gently slipping it between the pages of my book, completing the exchange discreetly. I stroked the thin room card, looking toward the back of the class. When he saw me take out the room card, Patrick Quinn's expression immediately changed. He wanted to say something, but my gaze stopped him in his throat. I don't keep a useless dog by my side. Patrick Quinn looked at me urgently, hastily assuring that he was definitely the most useful dog. My lips curled, my expression cold. "Then prove it." I went to the hotel as agreed, arriving very early, standing nervously in the room. I stood at the door until he came and took my hand. "Don't be afraid. I'll be gentle." I sat on the bed, took out a bottle of juice from my bag, drank a few sips, but because I was too nervous, I choked. Connor Peacock handed me a tissue. I thanked him softly, then handed him the juice bottle. "You drink it. I just made it before leaving. It's very good for your health." Connor Peacock didn't want to waste time on trivial matters, took the bottle and drank it all at once. "I'll shower first. You stay here and wait obediently." The sound of water in the bathroom started. I looked around the room, my gaze finally stopping on the wooden table opposite the bed. Connor Peacock quickly finished showering, coming out with his upper body bare, but his spirit began to wane, his eyelids growing heavier, finally lying on the bed, falling into a deep sleep. I checked his eyelids again, confirming he was fast asleep, then took the room card and left. Patrick Quinn passed by me in the lobby, but he didn't come alone, using his parents' name to invite the homeroom teacher. The homeroom teacher had drunk half a bottle of wine alone in the dining room, half conscious, half dreaming, being led into the prepared room. After that day, Connor Peacock took a week off school, no longer appearing. Patrick Quinn must have deeply hated Connor Peacock, so he put 4 pills in the teacher's wine, enough to make a person lose all reason, completely controlled by desire. After it was done, I took away the hidden camera Connor Peacock had concealed. Inside, besides the video of him being assaulted, there were indeed far more disgusting things. For example, how my sister was first coerced, then, step by step, fell into hell under the threat of those videos. There were others, too. I cut out the video between Connor Peacock and the homeroom teacher, enlarging each frame. It was a one-sided assault full of violence, rape, blood, and pain. I fast-forwarded, finding the second half of the video just repeated these things, feeling extremely bored, yawning, and closing the video. Another Monday, I received a text from Connor Peacock. He wanted to meet me. I happily agreed. This time, the location was a more discreet hotel. When I opened the door, Connor Peacock sat in the dark, not saying a word. As soon as I stepped in, he rushed at me, frantically tearing at my clothes. I didn't resist, letting him do whatever he wanted. But very soon, Connor Peacock suddenly pushed me away, sitting on the bed, covering his face, sobbing desperately. That bastard. That animal. He ruined me. I'm done. After leaving there, I casually dumped the glass of fruit juice. The drugs had accumulated enough dosage. These things were no longer needed. The next week, the homeroom teacher returned to class. He looked terrible, with clear, dark circles under his eyes, lecturing without any vitality. Although male-on-male assault couldn't yet be prosecuted, turning a minor's violation into the other party's deliberate seduction must have cost him a lot of connections and effort. The class was extremely sleepy, so no one noticed when Connor Peacock slipped into the room. By the time everyone realized, Connor Peacock had already taken a knife and stabbed repeatedly into the dignified man on the podium. Blood splattered everywhere. The classroom was silent for a moment, then immediately drowned in panicked screams. I followed my classmates, hiding in a corner of the room, then gently crushed the phone SIM card I had just used to anonymously send the video to Connor Peacock last night. The video also included the clear time and place of the hotel, a nightmare turned into an eternal shadow. He himself became a completely ruined victim. In extreme fear and anger, Connor Peacock had gone completely mad. The police officer investigating the case was a familiar face. Captain Sherman saw me and immediately walked straight over. I proactively spoke. "Thank you, officers, for catching the culprit." I spoke very sincerely, mixed with the gratitude of someone who had just survived a disaster. But Captain Sherman only looked at me coldly. "Is he really the culprit?" "We all saw it with our own eyes," I said innocently. "Clearly, it was Connor Peacock who stabbed Mr. Thompson. The witnesses and evidence are all there. What more evidence do you need?" I smiled gently. Connor Peacock was arrested for intentional murder. The large screen in the cafeteria suddenly played a video. In the video were Mr. Thompson, who had just been killed, and the murderer, Connor Peacock. The video was quickly cut off, but it was enough for students to save it on their phones and pass it around. Public opinion began to split. At first, everyone still sympathized with the killer, who was an excellent student, but gradually other voices emerged. He wasn't such a good person anyway, pretending to be a model student. But behind the scenes, didn't he specialize in flirting with girls? Those two were both bisexual. So disgusting. Probably killed over love. The school organized psychological counseling for the whole class. I left the counseling room and ran into Sophia Lynn. She glared at me with hatred. She was probably certain that Patrick Quinn turning against her was my doing. I stopped, passed by her, and whispered in her ear, "You guessed right." Sophia Lynn's counseling session wasn't smooth. Someone spread that she was mentally ill, and the rumor immediately spread throughout the class. After school, she asked me to meet on the rooftop. Sophia Lynn was so agitated her face was distorted. She had tasted the bitterness of verbal violence, so she used the most vicious words to insult me. I stood close to the edge of the rooftop, watching Patrick Quinn silently appear behind her. 2 days later, Sophia Lynn's family reported her missing to the police. The school searched for a week, finally discovering the girl's decomposed body in the rooftop water tank. The once beautiful face was now swollen, rotting into a pile of decayed flesh. The entire school's teachers and students were horrified, but more disgusted. They had been drinking that water for a whole week without knowing. The police initially concluded it was suicide. There were no cameras on the rooftop, but a hallway camera showed she went up to the rooftop alone from a blind spot, and she had lied to her parents about staying at a friend's house over the weekend. These deliberate actions inevitably led to associations with the rumors of her mental illness before. Why are there such hateful people? Even in death, she makes everyone sick. She deserved it. You reap what you sow. Those who unknowingly drank the contaminated water no longer had any sympathy in their eyes for their former classmate. The series of murders caused the school's reputation to plummet. I remained in a pretty good mood, even bringing flowers to visit my sister. Oh my goodness, kid, who brings white chrysanthemums to visit a patient? The nurse looked at the bouquet I placed at the head of the bed, crying and laughing. My sister still had no reaction, lying on the bed, thin to the point of being only skin and bones. I sat beside her, carefully picking apart each flower, cutting them short, and placing them in a glass vase. Chloe Reed, foster parents, Connor Peacock, homeroom teacher, Sophia Lynn, and Patrick Quinn. When I finished placing the last white chrysanthemum, I leaned close to my sister's ear, softly saying, "I've played enough. You can rest now." When I returned home, a man in a neat suit was already sitting on the sofa, silently waiting for me. I changed my slippers, walked into the house, thought of something, and turned back to close the window. "Hello, teacher." I sat on the single sofa beside him, pouring myself a glass of water. "You've played too much," the man spoke calmly, but his presence pressed down heavily, stern and authoritative. I smiled. "Teacher, you personally signed my discharge papers back then." His eyes were sharp as a hawk's, coldly looking at me for a moment before giving a cold smile. "Indeed. The experimental data wasn't wrong. You're just like your parents, a born devil." I shrugged. "Thanks for the kind blessing." The withdrawal papers were quickly approved. Patrick Quinn, upon hearing the news, nearly went mad, running to the rooftop, threatening to kill himself to force me to stay. I agreed to meet him one last time. The wind on the rooftop was very strong. Patrick Quinn knelt on the ground, tightly hugging my waist, crying miserably. He said he would support my education, transfer schools, or even go abroad. I gently stroked his hair, for the first time using a gentle voice. "You no longer have a future. The police are on their way here. They've found out you were the one who threw Sophia Lynn into the rooftop water tank. We're both out of a future." Patrick Quinn's eyes widened. His breathing became panicked, but he still refused to let go. "I won't say anything. You'll be fine. I love you. Only you. I won't let you get into trouble." He kissed my fingertips reverently, repeatedly saying words of love. "Good boy, mad dog." I lifted his chin, my eyes full of praise. "I said I'd be your most loyal dog." He eagerly held my hand tightly. "Is that so?" I leaned close to his ear, whispering, "But only the dead are truly loyal." Patrick Quinn froze, looking at the rooftop wall, then back at me. His breathing became rapid, his whole body trembling violently. The rooftop door was suddenly kicked open. Captain Sherman rushed in with a gun. "Prove it to me one last time." I smiled, letting go. Patrick Quinn looked at me one last time, then turned and jumped straight off the rooftop. "No." Captain Sherman's voice faded in the wind. I turned back, looking at him with an innocent smile. "See?" I obeyed. Captain Sherman was furious to the extreme, pointing the gun at me, his voice hoarse. "Everything was arranged by you, wasn't it?" I neither admitted nor denied, only gently said, "I just want to remind you that smoking is bad for your health." He didn't accept my kindness, still pointing the gun at my forehead. "Your biological parents were the culprits of the 623 serial murder case 10 years ago, right?" I nodded. "But they were shot dead on the spot by you righteous police." "You really think so?" "Of course," I smiled lightly. "They didn't work cleanly. They deserved to be punished." Captain Sherman was furious to the extreme. "You think what you've done is clean? If someone hadn't come forward to erase the surveillance footage, you think you'd escape the law?" I repeated the word law mockingly, then laughed. When my sister was raped, desperately begging for help. Where was the law? I gave them a chance. I pulled down my shirt to reveal the freshly healed scars. But this is the result. Some people condoned, some ignored, some played freely without fear. For the first time, Captain Sherman showed horror, lowering his gun, momentarily silent. I adjusted my shirt, slowly stepping toward him. When I was in the hospital, my teacher made me memorize the law, saying that breaking it comes with a price, but the reality out there is the complete opposite. Those who bully and humiliate others are never punished. Victims never see justice. Money and power ultimately stand above the law, even trampling it. So why can't I? Captain Sherman tremblingly raised his gun again, his voice full of torment. No matter how wrong they were, they didn't deserve to die like that. I proactively stepped forward, pressing my forehead straight into his gun barrel. But the law can't punish me, and you can. Use your police uniform, your future, your prospects, to deliver justice for those who abused others. Send the culprit you're so sure of to hell yourself. The gunshot rang out. The last day of school, a black armored car was parked at the school gate. I turned back to look one last time at the large sign hanging in front of the building. 10 years to grow a tree, 100 years to nurture a person. Inside the car, my teacher had been waiting for a while. I flipped through the withdrawal documents, glancing at the list of illnesses listed above, letting out a mocking laugh. Did they write it wrong? Besides my brain, my heart, liver, spleen, and stomach are all ruined. They were rotten from the start. The teacher glanced at me coldly. This time, you caused so much trouble in your sister's name. Now that she's dead, don't expect to leave the hospital again. I stretched, my tone light and carefree. Anyway, I don't like this rotten world at all.